Usually, when we think about how the world works, we kind of picture this, well, almost like a cosmic vending machine.
Oh, yeah. Like input equals output.
Exactly. You put in your coins, which, in this case is your hard work, your sweat, your really long hours. You press the button, and out pops your reward.
Yeah.
Like financial security, a good salary, just a comfortable life.
Right, because it's a very comforting view of the universe. I mean, it satisfies that basic human desire for fairness.
But then you look around and you realize you keep pressing the button and absolutely nothing is dropping. I mean, for so many people, they're feeding all their time, all their physical energy into this machine, and the return is, well, it's barely enough to survive on.
Yeah.
And instead of realizing the machine doesn't accept sweat as currency, we're basically taught to just hit the glass harder.
Which is the definition of a broken strategy. I mean, if you're operating under the assumption that the market is this moral judge that rewards physical exertion, you're just playing the wrong game entirely.
And that is actually the perfect jumping off point for today's deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
We are unpacking a framework today that looks at modern wealth creation through this famously unsentimental Machiavellian lens.
Yeah, it's definitely not your standard advice.
Right. And just to be clear for everyone listening, we are purely exploring the ideas in this source material.
Mm-hmm.
We're not necessarily endorsing this somewhat ruthless worldview, but we are breaking it down because it is fascinating. This isn't about traditional financial advice, saving 10% of your paycheck and just waiting 40 years.
No, not at all.
It's a completely unvarnished look at the underlying mechanics of how value, leverage, and power actually operate in the market. The mission here is to help you, listening right now, understand the architecture of wealth so you can stop feeling like you're locked out of the room where the real decisions are made.
Yeah, and to get into that room, we have to start with a massive, just foundational perspective shift. Because, well, most people walk through life convinced that they have a money problem. But what the source argues they actually have is a value problem, or even more specifically, a delivery problem.
So let's break down the mechanics of that, because the framework says we have to completely unlearn that classic equation that was drilled into us since childhood.
Oh, the whole get a degree, find a secure job.
Yep. Work incredibly hard until you hit retirement age.
Right. And, I mean, if the goal is simply survival, that path does function. It works. But if the goal is autonomy, like actual control over your own time, then that equation is just mathematically broken.
How so? Like mathematically?
Well, the fatal flaw in that traditional path is that it chains your income entirely to your physical presence. You're trading a non-renewable resource, which is your time, for a highly renewable resource, which is currency.
So the moment you stop moving, the money literally stops flowing.
Exactly.
But I want to push back on this a bit, just on behalf of the listener, because this strikes at the absolute core of how society functions. I mean, we are conditioned from day one that hard work is the ultimate virtue.
Sure, it's deeply ingrained.
Right. So if a laborer is out there sweating 12 hours a day in the blazing sun, like pouring concrete, are we essentially saying the sheer physical toll of their effort has no intrinsic economic value?
We are saying exactly that. And I know, it is a brutal reality to face.
Wow. Yeah, that feels almost cynical.
It does feel cynical because we naturally conflate physical exhaustion with value. Like, the laborer's effort is physically demanding, it is intensely real, and it takes an enormous toll on their body. We want to reward that.
Right, because it's hard.
But here is the Machiavellian reality of the market that the source lays out. It is an algorithm, not a moral entity. The market does not reward pain.
It doesn't care.
No, it doesn't measure your calorie expenditure, and
Right.
It certainly does not care about how badly you need the money or the size of your mortgage.
So what does the algorithm actually measure then? If it's not effort, what is the input it's actually looking for?
It measures utility, scarcity, and scale. So a person sitting in a quiet, air-conditioned room making a single highly strategic decision can earn more in an hour than that laborer does in a decade.
Okay, explain the mechanism there. Why does the market value that single decision so disproportionately?
It comes down to the radius of impact. So the laborer's impact is capped by their physical reach, right? They can only pour so much concrete in a single day.
Yeah, you only have two hands.
Exactly. But the person in the air-conditioned room might be redirecting a supply chain that drops the cost of goods for 10 million people. The market rewards usefulness and leverage. If your skill set can be taught to someone else in 2 weeks, the supply of your labor is practically infinite.
Oh, and in basic economics, when supply is infinite?
The price drops to the floor, regardless of how much you're sweating.
Right. So complaining that this is unfair is basically screaming at gravity. It's
Right.
not going to change the physics of the situation. So if the market is this unsentimental algorithm that only responds to scalable value, how do we begin to engage with it? Like, how do we shift from that labor mindset to this Machiavellian mindset?
Well, the text says you have to completely reorient your focus. You have to stop chasing money and you have to start hunting for friction.
Hunting for friction. Because money inherently moves toward solutions,
Yeah.
right? The framework actually points out this really stark difference in internal dialogue.
Yeah, it's a fascinating contrast.
Like someone trapped in the traditional equation asks, who is going to pay me for my time? But the architect of wealth asks, what massive pain exists in the market right now that I can eliminate?
Precisely. Small problems yield small compensation. Massive, widespread problems yield serious wealth.
Let's talk about Amazon for a second, because it's the perfect illustration of this mechanism in the source text. When you strip away the massive scale it has today, I mean, Jeff Bezos didn't capture that wealth by just working a million times harder than the owner of a local bookstore.
Not at all. He captured it by identifying a massive web of friction in the physical world and just systematically eliminating it.
Right, think about the friction of traditional retail back in, the late 90s? You had to drive to a store, hunt for a parking spot.
Hope the book you wanted was actually in stock.
Yes. Wait in line to buy it, drive all the way home. I mean, that is a massive amount of collective human energy just being wasted. Amazon didn't just sell books. They engineered a system that collapsed all that friction into literally a single click.
And that is the exact mechanism of value creation. When you aggregate demand and eliminate the friction of physical logistics for millions of people simultaneously, the market floods you with resources.
You know, a lot of traditional financial advice uses these soft metaphors like chasing butterflies to describe this. Like, if you run around frantically with a net trying to catch butterflies, which is money, you just end up exhausted. So they tell you, oh, build a beautiful garden instead so the butterflies naturally come to you.
Right, I've heard that one.
It's a nice poetic image, but it doesn't really explain how wealth is actually built. It feels a bit too passive.
Yeah, it is too passive. Building wealth isn't about planting flowers and just, waiting around.
Exactly. I kind of look at it more like civil engineering. Like, imagine you have this massive, raging river, which represents consumer demand, all the things people desperately want or need to do.
Okay, I like this.
And on the banks of this river, you have thousands of people trying to cross, but the current is way too strong. So the person operating in the traditional time for money equation looks at this and says, okay, I will build a small rowboat, and I will physically row people across one by one for like $10 a trip.
Yes. Which is totally exhausting. It's capped by the hours in a day, and honestly, it's highly dangerous.
Right. But the Machiavellian approach is completely different. That person steps back from the river entirely. They spend a year or maybe 5 years hauling steel, designing blueprints, taking on massive risk, and they're earning absolutely nothing while they work. But what they're building is a toll bridge.
And once that bridge is complete, the entire dynamic of wealth fundamentally shifts.
Yes, because the bridge solves the friction of the river permanently. The engineer doesn't have to physically row anyone anymore. The bridge operates 24 hours a day. The money just becomes a natural, inevitable byproduct of the traffic flowing over the solution they engineered.
That is a really phenomenal way to understand the mechanics of leverage. The rowboat is a job. The bridge is an asset. But, to take this out of the theoretical for a second, how do we spot these rivers in our daily lives? Like, where are the opportunities to build these bridges?
Well, the framework has a really pragmatic answer for this. You nap the complaints.
Right. Which requires active listening, not just passive hearing.
Yeah.
Wherever there is fear, wherever there is persistent inconvenience, confusion, or just frustration, there is an economic bottleneck waiting to be solved.
Like, what do people hate doing? What software makes them want to literally throw their computer out the window?
Wow.
What industry still relies on paper forms and a fax machine?
Exactly. And most people are entirely consumed by their own financial anxieties. They encounter friction, they complain about it, and they just move on. They don't realize the market is practically screaming at them, handing them the blueprint for a bridge.
But the ambitious mind hears a complaint
Yeah.
and immediately reverse engineers it.
Yes, into a product or a service.
But here is where we hit a massive psychological barrier, and it's something I think a lot of our listeners, who are probably highly successful professionals, really struggle with. Let's say you find a problem and you learn how to solve it. If you are doing it one-on-one, you haven't actually built a bridge. You've just built yourself a much fancier, faster rowboat.
Ah, yes. This is the trap of what the source calls the expensive cage. It's a very comfortable trap, but it is a trap nonetheless.
Break down the mechanics of the expensive cage for us. Why is it so hard to escape?
Well, think of a highly specialized corporate attorney or a brilliant neurosurgeon or even an elite management consultant. These individuals have identified very painful, complex problems, and they provide incredibly valuable solutions.
Right.
And as a result, they can command a massive premium hourly rate, maybe $1,000 an hour or more.
But they're still structurally bound by the 24-hour clock.
Exactly. If the surgeon's hands are not physically inside a patient, the earning stops. If the lawyer is not billing hours, the revenue drops to absolutely zero. They are still trading time for money. They are inside a cage. It's just lined with velvet.
Velvet handcuffs.
Right. And the reason it is so difficult to escape is the opportunity cost.
The golden handcuffs, basically.
Precisely. If you're earning $1,000 an hour, the thought of stopping your practice for 2 years to build, say, a scalable healthcare technology platform where you might earn literally zero for 24 months is terrifying.
Oh, completely.
The immediate reward of that high hourly rate blinds you to the long-term power of leverage.
So how do you practically shift from the expensive cage to true leverage? I mean, we all know the basic examples. The source talks about how a physical yoga class has 20 people, but a recorded online course can be downloaded by 20,000 people while the teacher sleeps.
Right.
But the transition implies moving from operating the machine to actually owning the machine.
Yeah, it's the difference between being the star employee who writes brilliant code for a single tech company versus the founder who writes a piece of software that solves a specific supply chain issue for 1,000 companies at once.
Right.
Hard work without leverage creates physical exhaustion. Hard work applied to a lever creates systemic power.
I can hear the objections already, though. Someone listening right now is thinking, okay, that's great for Silicon Valley, but I don't know how to code. I don't have venture capital funding to build a national franchise. I don't have the runway to just stop working.
And the Machiavellian framework is completely unsentimental about those objections. It views them as, well, a failure of imagination.
Wow. That is harsh.
It is harsh, but let's examine the logic. You do not need to start by building a billion-dollar platform. Leverage is not a binary switch. It is a spectrum.
Okay, so where do you start?
You start by automating one single process in your current job. You start by outsourcing the lowest value task so you can focus on the highest value strategy. You start by taking the specific knowledge you use for one client and packaging it into a system or a methodology that can be sold to 10 clients without requiring 10 times the hours.
So it's not about the sheer size of the company. It's about the architecture of how you deliver value. Like, are you structurally selling your literal minutes, or are you structurally building a mechanism that can function independently of your calendar?
Exactly, because money is just a neutral signaling mechanism. It flashes brightest where scalable value is being exchanged. If you moralize it, if you decide that building leverage is inherently greedy or that wealth is inherently corrupt, you will refuse to study its mechanics.
Right.
And if you refuse to study the mechanics, you're going to spend your entire life working for someone who did.
Which brings us to the ultimate destination, this entire framework. Because once you have shifted from selling time to building a leveraged system, the very definition of wealth transforms.
It really does.
It stops being about the cash flow hitting your checking account, and it becomes entirely about the underlying assets you control.
Right. The quote from the text is, "Income is what feeds you, but assets are what actually free you."
That was honestly the biggest aha moment for me when reviewing this material.
Yeah.
Let's look at the mechanics of corporate acquisitions, like when Facebook bought Instagram or when eBay bought PayPal in the early days. The founders of those companies didn't just receive a massive paycheck for the hours they worked coding the app.
No, they weren't being compensated for their labor at all. They're being compensated for their moat.
Yes. Explain what that means in this context, the moat.
Well, when a larger entity acquires a company like Instagram for $1 billion, which, by the way, had only 13 employees and zero revenue at the time, they are not buying a revenue stream.
Right, because there was no revenue.
Exactly. They
Mhm.
are buying an asset that controls a massive network effect. They are buying human attention, and more importantly, they are buying a structural threat to their own dominance.
Wow.
The founders of Instagram built a digital toll bridge that was so strategically placed, the biggest player in the market had to pay a fortune just to own the deed to the bridge.
They owned a solution that was so deeply embedded in the market's behavior that the ownership itself was the value. And that perfectly illustrates this profound shift in how we think about the end goal. I mean, we spend our entire lives obsessed with acquiring money. But fundamentally, human beings don't actually want money.
Right, no one wants digital zeros sitting in a server somewhere or stacks of paper in a vault. We want what the money acts as a shield against.
We want sovereignty.
Exactly. We want the ability to curate our own existence. We want the profound, unassailable power to simply say no.
Yes, to say no to a toxic manager.
To say no to a bad real estate deal. To walk away from circumstances that compromise our peace of mind.
Money is just the crude vehicle for that. Sovereign control over your own time and your own decisions is the actual destination. And if you chase the currency blindly without understanding the mechanics of leverage and asset ownership, you just end up becoming a servant to the money itself.
Yeah, your lifestyle inflates.
You earn more, your expenses rise, you fear losing it all, and you're still trapped in the exact same cage. It just has a better view.
It's like the source says, real wealth is measured by how little permission you need from the rest of the world to live your life.
I love that. So, kind of synthesizing this Machiavellian perspective, we have to fundamentally rewrite the equation we operate on. We have to stop worshiping the sheer endurance of unscalable effort. We must transition from chasing currency to identifying friction.
Right.
We have to take the risk of stepping back from the river, stopping the rowboat, and engineering a toll bridge that operates while we sleep.
Which forces a deeply uncomfortable audit of your own life. Like, where are you currently trading your finite, unrecoverable hours just to maintain the status quo? Because
Yeah.
the clock does not stop. Every month you spend frustrated that the input-output machine is broken is a month someone else spends mastering the actual rules of leverage.
The market doesn't care if you're frustrated. It only cares what you build. Which actually leaves us with a final, somewhat haunting thought to carry with you. We've spent this whole time talking about the immense power of decoupling your time from your earning potential.
Mhm.
Building these automated, frictionless systems.
Yeah, the digital toll bridges.
Exactly. But imagine the logical extreme of this Machiavellian market. If the entire global economy becomes this relentless race to build automated pipelines, to fully utilize AI, to eliminate every single point of friction and abstract human labor out of the equation completely, what happens to the human element?
That's a great question.
In a world where algorithms and systems flawlessly handle all the logistics of survival, maybe the ultimate luxury, like the rarest, most highly valued asset of all, won't be a perfectly scaled software company. Maybe, eventually, the only thing that will command a true premium is raw, unscalable, inherently inefficient human connection, something to mull over as you examine the bridges you're building today.